Welcome to the Markets Talk podcast, where we help you make sense of West Africa's investment world. This podcast is brought to you by Daba, your most comprehensive platform for investing in African stocks, bonds, and managed funds. You can download the Daba app on your favorite Google and Apple app stores. This week, there's a piece of good news many investors might easily miss. Even in a declining market, opportunities are quietly strengthening. Today, we break down the week of March 16 to 20 on the BRVM. And most importantly, what this means for you as an investor. Let's start with what matters most. The market declined this week, but that's not necessarily bad news. The BRVM Composite Index closed at 408.62 points, falling by 1.23%. The BRVM 30 also declined, ending at 191.81 points with a drop of 0.64%. But here's the key point. The BRVM Prestige Index actually moved up, a slight increase of 0.06%. What does that mean? It means that the strongest, most resilient companies continue to attract investor confidence, even when the broader market slows down. In financial markets, when capital rotates into high-quality companies, it usually signals consolidation, not crisis. Now let's talk about market activity. Trading volumes dropped to about 4,191,157 shares, compared to over 6,303,767 the previous week. Total transaction value also fell sharply from around 9,930,600,000 francs CFA to 4,296,500,000 francs CFA, a significant drop, but important to understand. This was a shortened trading week, with only 3 sessions due to religious holidays. So this is not a loss of investor interest, just less trading time. Now let's move to stocks. And here, we're seeing some very interesting signals. On the upside, CFAO Motors Côte d'Ivoire gained 8.79%. Total Côte d'Ivoire rose by 7.66%. And Ecobank Côte d'Ivoire advanced by 4.96%. What does this tell us? Investors are positioning ahead of earnings. They are anticipating future performance. And in markets, those who anticipate tend to capture the best opportunities. On the downside, Unilever Côte d'Ivoire declined by 15.71%. Africa Global Logistics Côte d'Ivoire fell by 14.36%. BOA Niger dropped by 14.7%. But this is not necessarily negative. These moves are largely driven by profit-taking. Investors who made gains are locking them in. This is a healthy and normal market dynamic. One key highlight this week, Sonatel remains the most actively traded stock, with over 547,040,000 francs CFA in transactions. Why does this matter? It shows that institutional investors are still heavily focused on large, stable companies. And often, where institutional money flows, long-term opportunity follows. Let's now turn to the bond market. And here, the signal is very clear. The market saw a slight decline in capitalization, but trading activity remained strong, with over 7,680,403,909 francs CFA exchanged. Most of the activity was concentrated in a short-term sovereign bond issued by Senegal. What does this mean? Investors are seeking yield while managing risk. This is typical in periods of mild uncertainty. Now, let's talk about one of the most important themes this week: dividends. Several companies have already announced their payouts, and the yields are attractive. BOA Burkina is offering around 397 francs CFA per share, with a yield of 7.36%. BOA Senegal is at 450 francs CFA with a yield of 6.52%. Sonatel confirms a strong dividend of 1,740 francs CFA, yielding 6.4%. SIPH stands at about 438.32 francs CFA, with a yield of 5.57%. Orange Côte d'Ivoire offers about 704 francs CFA, yielding 4.84%. And Sycable comes in at around 152.02 francs CFA, with a yield of 4.63%. On average, dividend yield is around 5.83%. That's highly competitive, especially compared to global markets. And this is just the beginning. Not all companies have announced yet. Now let's step back. What is the broader picture this week? A market in mild correction, profit-taking across several stocks, but at the same time, capital rotating into strong companies. And most importantly, attractive income opportunities are emerging. This is an opportunity phase, not a retreat. Looking ahead to next week, market recommendations highlight several undervalued opportunities with strong upside potential and manageable risk profiles. Without going into specifics, the market is starting to create interesting entry points. To receive weekly recommendations, access exclusive insights, track a continuously updated BRVM dividend calendar, and get reliable dividend forecasts. Subscribe to Daba Pro. With Daba Pro, you don't just follow the markets, you stay ahead of them. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Daba Markets Talk podcast. We'll be back next week with another update. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, follow us, and share with friends. Remember, this information is for educational purposes. Always do your own research or consult with a financial advisor before making investment decisions. And download the Daba app on your App Store to start investing in African stocks, bonds, and manage portfolios through your phone and find other helpful content. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing your financial knowledge.